All right, all things the city of Providence, the state of Rhode Island. Yeah, we do exist amidst this entire presidential race.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
It's always fun when I get fellow media member here to just kind of shoot the breeze. And when Dan McGowan is here, there's a big breeze that has to be shot. It is important that we stay focused on the things that are happening in our own community. And when it comes to the city of Providence, Dan is completely on top of it. I'll just say this, opining a little bit. In the old days, we always went to a newspaper reporter for all that is happening in a community like the city of Providence. I'd say with all due respect to the paper that WPRI.com leads the league here on being able to know what's going on inside the city of Providence, and Dan's big project is the city. Not that he's not covering other issues, but rely on him for what's happening in the city. And I will tell you, as the city goes, so goes Rhode Island. That's not a new concept. That is something that I think everybody needs to believe. And so it's always interesting when we get into the chance to kind of dig in a little bit. I might ask Danny about what he thinks about the presidential race. He's always got a thoughtful ear on that. And the other thing is what's happening in Rhode Island regarding that particular race. But in the meantime, this kind of caught my interest. Look at this headline. Raimondo, Providence should not go bankrupt, needs leadership. And she was caught on the fly. Here's a short excerpt of what she thinks.
I think they have to make difficult decisions. I think we need to see some leadership and some compromise and some difficult decisions. Because if we don't do that, people are going to get hurt.
Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks for your kind words, by the way.
Oh, well, listen, I mean it. If not for some of your work, I wouldn't be able to follow half of what's going on in the city of Providence, or maybe not even half. And speaking of that, it's really important to pay attention to what's going on in our major cities.
Sure.
They are economic engines. They are political hotbeds. They are important places. And in the midst of a presidential election, the likes of which we have right now, it's easy to forget what's happening at home.
Absolutely.
National and world crisis does that, and well, this election might be a national and world crisis, for heaven's sake.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, look, and in Providence in particular, right, it's an off year. So there's no elections, but there are ballot questions. There are serious things happening with our city council. 2 allegations of campaign finance violations for sort of the top 2 guys there. You've got a mayor who's still kind of learning his way in City Hall. People do kind of forget about it when you've got a big presidential election, when you've got big things going on. It's fun to be able to still cover it and kind of try to be that, the boots on the ground, listening and reporting out, what's going on.
What does the governor mean by that comment?
I think what she's in this funny spot of, you always hear, and you've had people on both your radio show and here, and I certainly talk to lots of people who say they look at these big problems that Providence has $1 billion, nearly $1 billion pension liability, nearly $1 billion unfunded OPEB, the healthcare liabilities, and you say, oh, the easiest solution, they should go bankrupt. I've talked to 1 million people that say that. I'm sure you have too. What she's basically getting that question, and she's saying, I'm talking to my experts at the Department of Revenue, I'm talking to the people in City Hall. They're saying, no, this is manageable. I don't think that the city should go bankrupt at this point, but it does need to make tough decisions. It needs to probably go revisit some of the, retirement commitments. Needs to find new revenues, things that we all kind of know. And she's kind of, I would say she's being a little bit tougher right now about, the mayor and the city council really needing to step up and try to actually make those decisions as opposed to just talking about them.
Well, this notion of bankruptcy is an interesting one. I have never asserted that the city of Providence should take a bankruptcy decision lightly, nor pursue it. I think the reputation of bankruptcy is damaging enough.
Yep.
When it comes to the marketing of a city. I think it sets back the progress of a city at least a year or 2.
Yeah, could be longer, yeah.
Until the reputation of the city chases up to what a bankruptcy may in fact fix.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to be provincial about it, if you're going to suggest that Providence just needs to take care of its own financial laundry, you might be more inclined to say bankruptcy is a needed fix. It unwinds deals. It takes the shackles, to quote Donald Trump, off of a lot of decision making that goes on. But I think the long-term reputational damage can possibly far outweigh the benefits of a
Sure. I
bankruptcy.
mean, look, if you're the governor and you're trying to bring PayPal to Rhode Island, you're trying to, bring more General Electric type employees here. You're saying you're doing all of this, and then you say, we really would love you to move to Providence, and then they say, didn't they just file for bankruptcy? I mean, just say it out loud, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It certainly wouldn't be encouraging. Now, people say Central Falls kind of got its act together after bankruptcy. Now that took a long time, and it took several years of maximum tax increases, and Central Falls is not Providence, right? Now they say Detroit too. One thing Detroit had that Providence doesn't is Detroit had real wealth willing to invest in their downtown, right? They had rich people, the Quicken guy who was willing to say, I love this city, I'm willing to invest in it. Providence has really great the healthcare system here in the colleges, but we don't have anyone that's willing to really step up. At least they haven't said it and say, I'll invest in downtown after a bankruptcy.
Well, even just the 195 redevelopment
Great example.
is as slow as slow can be.
Yeah.
In fact, it's literally been off the conversation since they did some reorg there. What's going on there?
Good question, and you're right. It has been quiet. They keep trying to push this idea of having the Wexford, the Life Sciences Center, come in, and if that happens, it will be a great project. It would be good for the city.
Where does that stand?
It's still very slow. I mean, very initial things going on. There's been and from my end covering the city, we've seen no tax stabilization recommendation. We've seen no permits are getting pulled. We're not anywhere near there yet. I mean, I would years out probably.
Well, you've got the URI joint collegiate facility that is nursing.
Yep.
All of that kind of stuff that is already.
That's right. Yep.
happened.
Getting almost done. In fact, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Other than that, the idea that the city has still not produced a rate card for development is uncanny.
That's right. And remember, think about last year, probably right around this time, maybe about 14 months ago, there was this big push. If the city standardizes its tax break agreements, and if they just say everyone gets this, if they meet certain criteria, if you build it, they will come. Haven't seen it yet. Haven't seen one application for that specific tax stabilization.
What's happened with the fledgling conversations of PayPal and the Superman building and all of that?
We haven't heard too much about that since I think the last time I was on, probably a couple of weeks ago. I think the governor remains pretty confident that there's a good chance that PayPal may come here. Whether it's going to be in the Superman building or not, we're still not sure. We know they at least toured it. I believe they toured it twice actually. We know that there's some interest. The problem is making it work and finding the money to repair and renovate that building.
Where is Jorge Alorza in his leadership role right now? He made a wise move to finally try to settle that firefighter thing. I don't know how many conversations you and I have had about that. So now he has avoided forced bankruptcy by a deal that could have been way out of whack.
Yep.
The union could have won but lost because bankruptcy might have occurred and forced everybody to the table broken. But he seems to be fledgling with this homeless downtown thing in Kennedy Plaza. He wants to build a center now, and even homeless advocates are in dispute as to whether it's a replicate, redundant suggestion. He wants to create giving meters where people can make contributions to the homeless at places where they would park or whatever.
He's had some growth. I mean,
where is this guy?
What's
he stand for? What's his vision?
That it's a very good question, and I spend a ton of time around him, and he's a lot different. I've only covered 3 mayors. I've covered a little bit of David Cicilline, all of Angel Tavares, and then this mayor. And he's a lot different than Angel Tavares was. Angel Tavares, generally speaking, you kind of knew where he was on things. He took a stand when he needed to, and then he ran for governor, right? And then he was out. This mayor, is planning to be there if he wins. He wants 2 terms as mayor. He hasn't quite put his mark on anything yet. One thing I give him credit for is he is very invested in parks and recreation. That's a real authentic thing about him. He likes to be able to be investing in kids, things like that. Problem is you still don't see the big. You don't see the every kid gets free Little League, agreement, or things like that would get you maybe some national press, things like that. So he definitely, and then on some of these bread and butter issues like cleaning up Kennedy Plaza, definitely takes a backseat to Joe Palino. He hasn't found a lot of allies, whether it's at the city council or at the state house, even the governor right now over some of these educational issues on charter schools. They're kind of at odds on some things.
Well, we see some performance numbers coming out where the city of Providence's public schools are still
horrific,
sucking pond water.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and if you if you've paid attention a little bit to this Achievement First Mayoral Academy situation.
Yeah, Warwick and Cranston bails out.
Yeah, and the mayor is very, basically the mayor is saying, I support your standard growth. If you're in third grade now, you get to go to fourth grade, fifth grade, and keep going. He supports that, but he doesn't support a much larger expansion, which is what they want to do. The governor does, and there is some friction there between the two. The governor wants that to happen.
All right, when we come back, there is one thing that the mayor thinks, and I agree with him on, and it was regarding the council and a potential slush fund. The council ought to clean up its own little financial problems before it starts creating another one. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Dan McGowan continues with us. Here's a headline that is of, I think, serious concern. Documents reveal why the city council president's campaign cash is under a spotlight, and here's a narrative on that.
This is the Board of Elections investigative report. 57 pages obtained by Eyewitness News through a public records request. It paints a picture of 53-year-old Luis Aponte's finances and suggests he repeatedly used his campaign fund for personal expenses. The report shows Aponte spent money on groceries, Netflix, and an Apple iTunes account. It shows he didn't have a personal bank account between November 2014 and April 2015, then again from October 2015 until April 2016. That disclosure from an affidavit included in the report explaining that he reimbursed his campaign $1,700 using money from his city retirement account and $13,900 more using a loan from his ex-wife and current campaign treasurer.
Really? No personal checking account to separate that which is your life and that which is your campaign? I mean,
yeah, it is. What's sad is that you and I, you've had the show a couple of years now. We've talked about this several times.
Three.
If you
3 years.
3 years. Not 3 times. I was going to say 6 times.
We probably talked about it 50 times in 3 years. Really?
Right.
How?
It is. That was one of those reports that I was by no means surprised about, but was also. It's disturbing, right? And you talk to members of city councils. These guys, generally speaking, want to do the right thing. They want to try to, better the city in the way that they think is best. And then they've got distractions like this situation. They've got the Kevin Jackson situation.
Right. You got 2 city councilors in hot water. By the way, Aponte's not charged yet by the attorney.
Not charged. In fact, there isn't even, at this point, we don't even know that there's an investigation. The Board of Elections basically hands it off to and says, here's what we did. They do all the work, essentially.
Right. But it's not going to go unresponded to in the Attorney General's office.
No.
Even the missing in action Attorney General's good staff will take a look at this and say, a statement will have to be issued, if not a charge that will come here. But this is a guy who still hasn't cleared up his fees and fines with the Board of Elections for late and messy filings.
That's right. I believe he owes somewhere in the $40,000 range.
He's a mess.
Yeah.
He's the president of the city council, and he's a mess. Nice enough guy to bump into, but he's a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does raise that question. This is something I remember covering, and it was very inside baseball Providence stuff, but when they were putting their team together, Councilman Aponte, Councilman Kevin Jackson were putting their team together to replace Mike Solomon as the president and the majority leader. And this was something that was in the public sphere. I had reported it several times. They sat down, they promised the group that was supporting them, we'll take care of it. We're gonna make this better. We're not going to embarrass you. They haven't lived up to that end of it.
And amidst all of this, they're trying to change the rules of a $40 million bond.
That's right.
Where the people approved the financing of fixing the potholes.
They still have to approve it.
Well, they still have to
Yeah,
approve it.
yeah.
I'm sorry. It's coming up.
Yeah, November.
Infrastructure is important, but they want to take, and this is where I do agree with Mayor Lorza, they want to take a goodly portion of those proceeds and divvy it up equally amongst the precincts.
Yep.
Do we call them precincts?
Wards, yeah,
Wards.
yeah.
Wards in the city. And actually make individual councilors responsible for the discretionary spending inside their wards.
Yeah.
Hey, did they understand the difference between legislative and executive operations in government?
And this was, remember, this was a fight that happened over the summer for a little while, and the same thing happened. The mayor said, "Not going to work. I'll veto it. It just won't happen." They came to an agreement. The agreement was basically, we're going to send this to the voters, and then before Election Day, we will publish a complete list of every project that we're going to pursue. They realized 2-3 weeks ago they weren't going to be able to publish that list. The city, the administration said, let's break it into 5 sort of pools of money: potholes, rec centers, things like that. And we'll tell people this is what we're spending on. Can't give you the projects, but we want to at least tell you the pools of money. The council came back and said, if you're going to do that, you're going to let us control half of that money. And that's where we are right now. With less than a month before Election Day, we don't know what project is going to happen or which projects will happen.
Ripe for the kind of slush fund power politics that corrupts.
Sure. And something that we've seen before, by the way, not even just,
their argument may be, we know the neighborhoods best.
That's always the argument. And look, there's probably some truth to that. That's why you work with the administration.
That's why you advocate.
Exactly. And it's not, the worst level is obviously the corruption, the potential for corruption. It's also, these guys they don't have the staff, and they aren't urban planners, right? So I want this street done, and then somebody wants another street. You can do that together if you have a planning department that's figuring that out for you. These guys don't have that ability. It's going to cost the city more money. It leaves lots of money, untouched, and that was a problem in the past. And so it isn't particularly good planning. Aside from, obviously, it's not good fiscal policy or anything like that.
So where does this end up prior to election day?
Here's a good question. So, and this is one I haven't got a good answer to. The voters could very well, almost certainly will support. I mean, traditionally, Providence voters do support these bond initiatives. So if they can't figure out how they're going to spend this money, but the voters approve it, now you've got the approval to do it. But if you don't have a list of projects, will people even issue that money? How do you get that money? Will people be willing to
meaning the investor
community,
yeah.
Right? That's a big question. So we don't know. I mean, look, the city needs well more than $40 million for reinvestment, but at this point, I mean, I'm hearing from people who would be almost always inclined to support this that are calling me and saying, how can I support without knowing the project?
Speaking of support, will the majority leader get it in his write-in efforts? Dan's insight on the District 5 race, which is now a statewide discussion. Next. Yeah, so we've got this little situation. John DeSimone, the majority leader who's been the District 5 state representative in Providence forever, saying right there that it's his time. It's his time to do something unprecedented. Sorry for laughing. His time to do something unprecedented, and that is to win a write-in candidacy to retain his seat. By the way, Mr. DeSimone is coming here Wednesday of next week, and we'll talk about it. Anything can happen.
Sure.
Chances, in my humble judgment, are slim and none.
Very. I mean, it is incredibly difficult to perform a write-in campaign in any climate. Especially when you're you're an incumbent who couldn't carry your own primary, right? I mean, this is not easy. There's also the issue of you in Rhode Island, you can't run a sticker campaign, which means you can't just hand people vote for me and then they put a sticker on. They have to actually write John DeSimone's name in.
And try to spell it right.
Doesn't
have to be perfect.
Right, doesn't have to be perfect, but they have to get it generally. It is incredibly, incredibly difficult. Though, I mean, look, if you're the majority leader, you've got, I think he still has about $50,000 in his campaign account, a lot riding on trying to win. I suppose I could see. I mean, you'll talk to him next week. I suppose I could see why he's doing it.
Well, listen,
but very
Mayor
unlikely.
Lorza is not. Mayor Lorza was a supporter, is no longer.
That's right.
The speaker never got engaged, and his team, the speaker and his team, never got engaged in DeSimone's race, and now are completely hands off and are supporting Marcia Ranglin-Bassel, who nipped him by 21 votes in the primary,
right,
from
yeah.
500 and change to 500 and change. So he's kind of out there all by himself.
Yeah. I mean, he's still a big, he's a union guy, right? So I think he'll have some organized labor support. You saw it even with the folks who are supporting him, the Checkmate Consulting. It's a union shop that is doing that, the Dufaults, and so, you know, he'll have his own support. But it's such an uphill battle, and like you said, you know, if he could have used the speaker's resources before, now the speaker's got his own race. So, you know, you're not gonna be seeing him, you know, the speaker handing off a couple of guys in that race.
It's going to be a cold shower, I think, for the representative to learn that while people will come even in a general election, and when they see your name now with the new technology, circle the, you know, like the SAT test, you got to know, you know, fill in the circle. But to actually take the pen, write it, find the write-in space, and write it in.
Yeah.
Whereas it might, to the casual observer, say, well, why is that such a big deal?
It's a lot.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It requires purposeful, active voters
Right.
who, in the middle of a presidential race, remember to do that.
That's right. And remember, I mean, I believe it has never worked here before. The closest one was a couple of years ago. 2 years ago, Marcus Mitchell against Councilman Kevin Jackson nearly does it. Think about the difference, though. This is the east side of Providence that did it. It was an anti-Buddy Cianci climate, and it was and Kevin Jackson's campaign was directly connected to Buddy Cianci, and the people there were passionate, were in the know. This is a completely different situation.
You're guessing uphill, right?
Very
battle.
uphill, yeah.
And we'll see how that goes. We'll talk to Mr. DeSimone next week. Final thing I thought was just kind of interesting. Careful what you tweet, man.
Oh, yeah.
Brett Smiley, the new chief of staff for the governor, former Providence mayoral candidate and administrator for Mayor Lorza. Trump is that blowhard you get seated next to at a dinner party who just spouts off uninformed opinions. I empathize with Mr. Smiley's opinion, but a little hot water with the governor?
Yeah, I mean, look, the governor is somebody who I think likes to be very on message, as you know, and I don't think she wants her staff in any way. She doesn't want to have to answer the question, right? That's
Maybe
the
a few
big problem.
cocktails for Brett that night, because I guess there were some others that he got to and untweeted. He's a pretty disciplined communicator, actually.
Yeah, very surprised. I mean, I know him very well. I was shocked that came out. Not because, look, that's how he feels, there's no question, but because that is not like him to put it out there like that.
Social media changes behavior.
That's right.
Your generation better get smarter.
You used to walk up the hill to school with your
Both ways,
no
in 4
shoes
feet
on.
of snow, with no communication tools whatsoever, and life was good back then. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Final word next. True, it's true. By the way, during the break, Danny McGowan mentioned to me that Brett Smiley, the chief of staff, is known not to have a cocktail. So, just a theory. It wasn't a cocktail. I guess just the adrenaline of the race had Mr. Smiley tweeting. I don't think it's more than a 55 and a 50, but I'm telling you, social media, be careful. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. David Dooley, the president of URI, on his big referendum question, or the schools, Monday. Good night.